Playing along?
Ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chief Tom Hackney with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. This morning at 11 o'clock, patrol officers from the Sheriff's Office were dispatched to Cleveland Armed Apartments at 5020 Cleveland Road to report of a shots fired with a possible injured person. Several 911 callers gave a vehicle description and a suspect description from the shooting. The responding officers who were going to the call actually saw a vehicle which matched that description at the intersection of 45th and Avenue B. Those officers attempted to stop the car as several officers were around. The driver of that car fled from the officers. A pursuit was initiated that went from 45th and Avenue B to Paris and Moorhead, which is just a block or so behind me. The passenger in that car fled on foot from the car. As he exited the car, several of the officers saw in his waistband a firearm. The foot pursuit continued from Paris and Moorhead to a business at 5748 Avenue B. The suspect was seen going around the back of that business and crawling under the house into a crawl space below the house. A canine unit was requested and a perimeter was established around that house. As the canine officer responded, he deployed his dog underneath that house in an attempt to get the suspect from underneath the house. The officer gave several verbal commands for the suspect to come out to comply. The suspect not only refused to comply, the suspect repeatedly shouted profanities at the officer. Keep in mind, the officers are going under the premise that as the suspect exited the car, he was seen with the gun. So this is an armed suspect in a confined area under a house, refusing to comply with orders. The canine officer, again, as giving the orders, saw the suspect reach towards his waist, the last location where he was known to be armed. The canine officer discharged his firearm, striking the suspect. The suspect was killed at the scene. The suspect has not been identified as of yet. At this point in time, a citizen along the route of the foot pursuit has identified where a location of a gun was, and we have recovered that gun from that location. The suspect, again, has not been ID'd at this time. The officer, as per standard protocol, has been placed on administrative leave.
We heard that the gun was found away from where the officer fired his firearm at the suspect.
There was a gun found along the route of the pursuit, yes, that is correct.
But not on the suspect at the time.
Keep in mind, folks, this is within just a couple hours of this occurring. This is a fluid investigation. The suspect's body is still on the scene. It's an area where the shooting occurred, a very confined location up underneath the house. We've not completed our investigation by any stretch of the means. I will say that a gun was found along the route, but the last thing that these officers knew is that that suspect who they saw go into that house was armed.
What commands did the officer give him?
The first shooting, the first report, what happened with that?
Apparently the same suspect description that we have underneath the house, clothing-wise, was involved in a shooting, non-fatal. Not even sure if somebody was struck at 5020 Cleveland Road. So that's what the officers were responding to at that location.
So that may or may not be a victim?
Well, there was a victim of that. I just don't know the extent of what that case is. That case is under investigation as well.
We don't know if they've been hit?
I don't believe they have. This was a report of shots fired at someone. Yes.
At 11 o'clock tonight.
That was 11 o'clock this morning.
What did the officer say to him under the house? What kind of commands did he give him?
It would be a standard command: show me your hands, come out, comply, get out from underneath the house. And again, the suspect not only refused to do that, but elected to shout the profanities back at the officer, as well as not comply.
So you know the officer made the commands, and you know that the suspect shouted back?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's aware that the suspect heard the commands, refused to comply with the commands, and went a step further.
So
who's
just
the
one officer fired their weapon?
At this point in time, I'm not ready to release the officer's name. Just one officer who did the shooting. I will have a follow-up news conference tomorrow to release the suspect's identity, so long as he's been identified and the officer involved's identity.
You said that there was a driver. Is that person in custody?
There was a female who was driving the Buick. That person is in custody.
Is she charged?
At this point in time, trying to figure out what her involvement in this case may have been. So we not only have a fleeing issue where she was running from the officers, but we have the fact that she has left the other call at 5020 Cleveland Road. So that's still being looked into.
How many officers were there when they stopped? When the car stopped, was there just the one officer who saw them? Was that the only officer?
There was two officers when the car initially had the pursuit and stopped. So there was two officers who were two officers in foot pursuit.
And how many shots were fired?
At this point in time, at least 3 to 4 shots.
All right.
And then the K-9 officer was called in, and the dog went under, and that's when that happened. So there were other officers here.
Correct.
by
There
the
were
time
4
that-
officers at the scene when the
4.
actual shooting occurred. However, the termination point of the vehicle pursuit and the beginning of the foot pursuit at Paris and Moorhead, there were 2 officers there.
Was
said
how many
it was
hit
a-
the suspect and
I don't,
where?
at this point in time, I don't know.
You said it was a business? What kind of business?
It's
was it?
a barber shop at 5748 Avenue B.
So when you say home, it's all under this barbershop slash home?
It is a converted residence into the community barber shop is what it's called.
Thank you, Chief.
All right,
Thank you
thanks.
very much.